All right, how's everyone doing? I am Rich CELENZA. Thanks for tuning into the Rich CELENZA Show. WTF are you talking about? So what I'm going to call today's podcast is Stop Destroying Your Body. So I've been putting up a lot of YouTube videos recently on fitness. If you follow anything about me, I try to help people with many different aspects, building confidence and different things, I guess you could say hygiene, fitness, like I just said, trying to meet women, all these different types of things. But what I realized a lot throughout my life is how people treat themselves and how they kind of abuse themselves. Never understood it to a certain degree, but as I really looked deeper and kind of studied my behavior amongst many others, I don't think necessarily a lot of us really even realize a lot of times that we're hurting ourselves, especially physically, even mentally. So if you listen to my podcast, you know I grew up in the nightclub business, and growing up in that environment at a very young age taught me a lot of things, and it's very similar to, if you ever heard the story about the two twins with the father that they had that was a convict. I think he ended up on, I don't know if he ended up on death row, but one of the father of the twins ended up in jail, I think, for the rest of his life. So one twin ended up following his father's footsteps, and then they questioned him and said, "Hey, how did you end up in this situation?" He says, "Well, look at my father. What did you expect?" The other twin ended up becoming very successful, and they asked him the same question, how did you end up in this position? And he said, "Well, look at my father. What would you think I wanted to end up like him?" So if you look at things from two different perspectives, and that's how I kind of looked at growing up in the nightclub business. I looked at it as a business, but I used to study people's behavior. I didn't even realize I was studying it. But people were obviously drinking, smoking, doing drugs and things in that nature. And I still to this day don't believe that that's bad for you necessarily, as long as you could do it casually. And truthfully, I was one of those people who could do that as an adult. My mother and father both do that as well. They're not smokers. They can have a drink and then not have a drink. It's not that big of a deal. I could even have a cigar, even though at one point I started to get addicted to cigars, but I was like, hey, I'm getting addicted to cigars. Pull out. I don't want this habit. But growing up in that environment, you see people kind of destroying their body to a certain point. Well, they're actually having a blast, which is quite ironic if you think of drinking or drugs or a lot of things when you're not doing those things, and you look at other people like from the outside and you're like, wow, these guys are acting like fools. Why would they end up in this situation, or why are they doing this to themselves? But if you're in there doing it, it's a lot funner than you think. So I can understand people enjoying themselves, especially with others that do that. We have to be honest about that. There's not billions of people drink because it makes them feel a certain way. Billions of people do drugs because it makes them feel a certain way, right? So this isn't actually what I'm going to get into with this podcast, but I did want to mention that because it kind of funnels into something else. So I've been doing the YouTube videos, and it's really about protecting your body. I always talk about this. You only have one body, and you're not going to escape it. And I think when we're in our youth, younger, we think we're indestructible physically. I really do a lot of times. In our teens, 20s, maybe even 30s. I know I did. But it was really interesting because I felt sick as a child for many, many years. And then my mother removed my tonsils, and it was a game changer for me. I physically never felt the same again. I was always sick. My throat was closing up. I couldn't breathe. They did an emergency removal of my tonsils. I think it was 3rd grade. And slowly but surely, I just became stronger and stronger. I also started to eat a lot more food, especially after high school, which I didn't realize how important getting the proper amount of food in, because I think from playing so many sports, I was burning it off. I was just burning everything off. I was just exhausting myself. I also didn't realize how important sleep was until, again, after high school. So I learned all these things. But what I'm going to get into today with this podcast is really learning how to pay attention to your body, regardless if you work out or not, regardless if you do drugs, party, drink, whatever or not. just being a human being. The one thing I think we neglect is what we're doing to ourselves mentally and physically, and I said that earlier. And I did just something very simple. I did a YouTube video that I'm getting pretty good feedback from, and it's protect your back. Regardless if you work out or not, a lot of people don't realize the toll they're taking on their back. Lifting things improperly. It could be their posture. It could be not strengthening your lower back or starting to have problems, sitting a certain way, sitting too much, not getting any exercise, walking, all these things. And what happens with a lot of people, and I've pulled out my back I don't know how many times lifting weights. And the reason I did a video on pulling out my back because I had a back, I did pull my back out a little bit recently in Hawaii. I went hiking one day throughout the day and then came back and weightlifted. Then I caught 2 flights for 5 hours apiece and got home. The next day I was destroyed. That was kind of ridiculous what I did, especially with the hiking, lifting, then going to do those flights. I should have prepared myself, but I fly so much, I take it for granted. My back was pretty rocked for a couple weeks, at least a week, maybe 2 weeks. So, let me get some water here. But here's the thing, back to back, and I know a lot of people that have back issues. One, I used to actually, when I was younger, have back issues, and I think a lot of it, this may sound crazy, is mental. You may not believe me. When people that have serious back problems are going to be like, you're an asshole. But the truth is, I think sometimes a lot of back problems, is mental. Or we mentally have to pay attention to make adjustments. They're right in front of us. Now, I'm not talking about people that have serious back issues. That's a whole different thing. I'm kind of talking about at the beginning phases, I think, a lot of times is there's certain things you're doing. You could start a new job. You could have started working out. You could be doing something different in your life, and now you start getting these little back spasms just here or there. And before you know it, you're in bad shape. Your back's rocked. Or, as I talked about in the video, it may start off very small, doing something. But then as time goes on, it could be years, it could be decades. Before you know it, that back pain progresses. And not only can this happen with back pain, it can happen within anything in your body. It could be knee issues. It could be ankle. It could be a wrist. It could be whatever it is. You have to pay attention to the beginning of the pain, I guess is what I'm saying, and try to figure out what is bringing this pain in before it goes too far. Because it's very similar like cancer, let's just say, for instance, and this literally just happened to me a month ago. A friend of my father's, I guess he's a friend of mine as well, I feel horrible. He didn't feel good for a few years. Let things go. Before you know it, he went into the hospital and he had cancer throughout his entire body. And I think he only lasted a month or two. Now, maybe if he would have went in early, they would have been able to stop it. Maybe not. Sometimes I think, though, this goes for men and women, we start to get a little pain. We either think we're going to fight right through it, or we don't want to know what the problem is. But sometimes by being naive and just ignoring it, as you know, it makes things just worse, man. I talk about like a car. I learned this when I was younger, but a car, when your car starts to break down, the more you drive it, I can assure you the better, most likely it's not going to get, which is kind of common sense. And I think of my body like that. I also look at a car as kind of a body where everything, for the most part, to run perfectly, everything has to be strong and, functioning on all levels. Now, that doesn't mean that I look at a human being like everybody, I think, has injuries for the most part within their life. I do. I mean, I've had so many injuries, especially if you play sports or if you push yourself physically, things are going to happen, especially if you want to get very extreme. So you're going to go through injuries. How you handle those injuries is really, that's the game changer a lot of times. And if you know anything about professional sports or athletes, you could tell a lot of athletes, especially in the past, that didn't, they kept beating their bodies up, are destroyed. They don't talk about it, but a lot of these guys that played football, even basketball, whatever sport it is, can't even get out of bed. It takes them a half an hour. They have to go to a lot of therapy. They can't even walk correctly. You can especially see that in football. And I get it, football's a whole different, that's a car crash every day when they're playing football. But you could be going through the same things as you get older. Because what happens, I think, especially if if you work a physical labor job, and I've done physical labor jobs for long periods of time too, when I was younger especially, you can just tell it is taking a toll on your joints, your muscles, your tendons. And anybody who does any type of physical labor, I have all the respect in the world for you. But please pay attention to what you're doing to your body, especially if you're in cold climates. I have a lot of family members that were painters for the most part. Some do drywall, construction. I think when I was younger, my stepfather was also involved with the construction business, bricklayers. I knew, a lot of people that were in that industry. And by the time they started in their 20s, by the time they were in their 40s, they literally looked 60. When they were in their 50s, a lot of these guys, I felt so bad. A lot of their bodies, especially living in Chicago, was just destroyed. I'm not sure if our bodies were made to do construction straight through our physical labor for 30, 40 years. Now, if that's all you can do, as far as the job goes, I understand. I'm not here to judge anybody. But if you can start to maybe progress into something where you're not always the one doing the hardest of the labor, especially as you get older, would be definitely something to consider. I even see that being in Orlando, Florida, and I've worked in Italian restaurants before, helping friends. And, a lot of old-timers from Italy in their 50s and 60s that I worked with, that were servers for a majority of their life, Italy and the United States. They were beat up, a lot of them. And when I work with them, I try to be, I'd run for them as far as plates goes, in and out, because I just felt bad. They're carrying 6 plates at a time. I was younger, a lot stronger than them, and I just want to make sure I also helped clear the tables, because they're lifting things that could be 40, 50, 60 pounds at times, these trays. So, that could be a little exaggerated, but they're easily 40, 50 pounds, and you start stacking a lot of dishes and larger plates. It gets heavy very quickly. And so back to paying attention to your body, please. And I talk about this with my mom and dad, because my mother's going on to 70 and my father's going into 75, and now they're going to a lot of doctor's appointments. And my mother and father, like I said, they were never, that I know, like, really, drugs is not their thing, even though my father and mother at one time owned a nightclub. And my father just likes to drink soda. For the most part, he's not a drinker. My mom's not a drinker. They'll have a casual drink. But I think they're in really good condition for their age. They look great still. And I think one of the reasons is both of them really paid attention to their body. And I think I got that from them. They also have incredible genetics. But if you're somebody out there that, especially you young people, pay attention. I did a video, was it a video or a podcast where I just mentioned this very quickly, but it was during something else. It was towards something else, and that is, I say you can only get stabbed so many times before you bleed out. And that goes for a lot of different things, but when it comes to your body, you keep hammering your body out and hurting it, eventually it will. You can bullshit everyone, I said, in your life, or anyone. You just can't bullshit your body. Your body, you just can't lie to it. Everything you're doing it to it. Good and bad. So, and that goes for your brain too. You could sit here and try and lie to yourself, but deep down inside, you know the facts about who you truly are and what you truly do. And you probably know your behavior. You just don't want to accept it sometimes. Now, when I say don't beat up your body, I don't also mean beat it up like you intentionally are out hurting yourself. Most people are. I don't think a lot of people, for the most part, do want to hurt their body. But I don't think they step back and say, wow, what is hurting my body? It could be something as simple as even something as ridiculous as the seat in your car. Every time you get in it, you don't realize it's starting to hurt your back, but you won't get a new car. And we have a car like that in our family that I almost can't even drive for long periods of time. I'm like, I don't know what it is. But if you stick with something, and it could be that minute, hurting your back, and you do it for years, what's going to happen? It was kind of ironic that I just talked about back and that. But I'm just using, it could be a mattress at home that you have that's destroyed, like you're too cheap to buy another mattress, but you're hurting your body. Those are just some things I'm just mentioning to you that you really have to pay attention to. And I get a lot of times we may not financially be in a position to make changes. But sometimes you can make it work, but you have to realize your body is the most important thing you have to take care of in your life over anything else. Because if you don't take care of your body, you really don't have a life. And it could be as simple as gym shoes or dress shoes. And I talk about this even back to lower back or your feet are killing you. If you ever spend money on a really good pair of shoes, you'd be shocked how much happier you feel throughout the day, and I'm not kidding. I got to get back to that. I haven't been buying the quality shoes that I used to, and I can tell it's taking a toll on my feet. I really can. Now that I think about it, I'm wondering if that was part of my lower back problem too, besides gym shoes. But I was wearing a pair of gym shoes in Hawaii, and I was going to get a new pair, and we got a new pair, and then I said, well, I'm going to go hiking. I don't necessarily want to make them dirty. We went up some falls. I wore them. They were too slippery. They're worn out, and I should have known better. So these are all things that I'm just admitting that I should have paid more attention, because I could have slipped, fell, who knows what could have happened. But I'm going to wrap it up with that. Please, when doing things, pay attention that you just don't do something stupid where it's a game changer. Like, you could even get on a motorcycle. You haven't been on one for a long time. It's raining. You're in a rush. Or you could be getting on a bicycle like I did a few years ago. I flipped over the handlebars like an asshole, mountain climbing, jumping ramps, broke a few ribs. Yeah, so my point being is we're all going to get injured, I think, but please just try to pay more attention to what you're doing to yourself, because it's nobody else's responsibility. And I think a lot of times it's the small things that injure us the most. In the gym, for the most part, most of my injuries came when I wasn't paying attention or I took something for granted. And it could be even you walking in snow or in the rain. You see people, or especially elderly people, slip. Something happens with their hip. You snap your ankle. You could just be goofing around with a friend, wrestling, snap your shoulder, break a collarbone, which that's just going to happen goofing around. I get it. But there's a lot of times you could be in a position to say, hey, should I do this or not do this? And it could be even saying surfing, because I live in Florida and I lived in San Diego, and you're like, wow, those waves, I'm a decent surfer. Should I risk it? Should I go out when the waves are really big? You hear people drowning all the time. Even it could be swimming. It could be anything. Please pay attention. All it takes is one mistake a lot of times, not only to injure yourself, but literally almost kill yourself. There are so many deaths every day that I think, they could have been prevented. So please pay attention to that. So I'm going to wrap it up there. If you like anything that I'm saying, you definitely probably would like to check out my YouTube channels. I've been just doing a lot of things with fitness, trying to help people, especially trying to prevent injuries. And what else? I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. All right? That's all I got for you today. But please take care of your body. It's your responsibility, and you are not escaping it. And if you want to learn anything about, I have that on YouTube too. I'm trying to teach people how to kind of gain muscle, lose weight. And that's what I'm so happy I said that. Here's the thing too with a lot of people, and I see obesity all over North America because I travel so much. And a lot of people I think are having back issues, knee issues, many issues throughout their body because of their weight. They don't realize it. When you're younger, again, could be 20s, 30s, maybe even 40s, you don't really think about that because your body can handle it. But most people I know, because I'm middle-aged now, going into their 50s, 60s, 70s, it's a whole different ballgame. I can promise you, being in decent shape is a lot easier in life than being out of shape. And I get a lot of people are obese, they don't necessarily want to be. And it could be something genetically or whatever the case may be. But sometimes just losing, it could be a few pounds, can change your life. I'm not even saying you have to look like some god or you have to be the weight that is for you. I think a lot of those weights are unrealistic where they say, hey, the guy who's 6 foot should be 170 pounds or 65 pounds. I don't believe in that shit. I believe you have to find what works best for you. But, if you are having some back problems, especially like I said, or within your legs, sometimes please pay attention to this. It is your weight a lot of times. It may not even be your job. It may not be a lot of these different things. So please pay attention to that. All right, your weight. And also, like I mentioned earlier, getting sleep. Nutrition's nutrition. We'll get into that. Partying's partying, whatever. But a lot of times where you're sleeping and how you're sleeping, even your posture while you're sleeping, means a ton. And I just went through this with my friend because I tore my rotator's cuff. Sorry to get long-winded on this, but I just want to make sure I get it all out. But kept saying my shoulder's killing me, and he used to be my roommate for years. I'm not talking a few years, off and on. He's lived with me for 30 years. And I said to him, hey, do you still sleep on your shoulder with the whole... And he's like, yeah. I'm like, well, what do you expect? And he's gotten heavier. All his weight his whole life has been on one side sleeping. I said, you have to... What do you think the problem is? I literally said, you don't work out that often. You don't do shoulders when you do work out. You don't do physical labor. What do you think it is? I mean, if you just, he's like, oh my God, I can't believe that was so, I'm like, yeah. So now he's got to just sleep on his back, or if you want, switch shoulders at least. But he had a thing where he always slept on one shoulder. So pay attention. I mean, a lot of things are just right in front of you, and just people seem to neglect it. Or they just, I don't care, I'm not going to change. But you have to sometimes make changes to get different results, especially physically. I keep saying this in my YouTube channels. When you work out, or what you are doing for your life, you have to look at the longevity of your life. If you plan on living. Now, if you only plan to live to 40 years old, or 50, or whatever the case may be, hey, that's on you. But if you want to live a healthier, or try to live a healthy lifestyle into your 70s, 80s, and beyond, I'm not sure, whatever, you're going to have to understand that for you to accomplish that, and have, I guess you could say, fun and be healthy in those years. Because I think a lot of people can live long or longer, or it's happening now, but are they really living better lives as they get older? A lot of people I see are living, they're living longer, but they're really damaged, or they're beat up. And I get they didn't have what we have now, I think, either. For the elderly, they may have had better foods, I think, to a certain degree, but they didn't have the physical activities, the information, and all these different things, or even medical advancements that they have now. So they could have prevented maybe some things, but they couldn't because it just wasn't there, especially surgeries and things of that nature when they were younger. But please, if you plan on living a long life, especially if you're working out, you want to look at working out as something for health and to help, not hurt. If you're lifting weights, I don't care what age, and you're damaging yourself again, there's a difference between getting sore and injuring yourself. Sometimes there's a fine line there, but you have to figure that out, especially as you get older, because a lot of people want to keep up with their past. You keep lifting weights that are too heavy for you, or say you're running for many, many years. It could be 10, 20, 30 years. You got to realize your organs internally, you've been jarring them, your ankles, your knees, thousands, hundreds of thousands of steps. All these things, you are taking a toll on your body constantly. Everything you do, you're taking a toll. You're putting miles on your body. So please pay attention to that. All right, I'm going to wrap it up there. If you are traveling, take care and safe travels.